favorite singers is the artist goes by Pink. I don't know what her real name is. Boy, can she sing. And she had a song that she put out earlier this year. Then all that's going on, it kind of came to me today when I was, it's called, what's it called? Walk Me Home. And I don't have the lyrics in front of me, so I just got to remember what I remember. But the key thing was, the world's so screwed up. The chorus basically says, the world's so screwed up that I just don't want to be alone right now. So would you just walk with me for a little bit, just because there's bad stuff out there, and I don't want to be there alone. And, like most of us, I went to bed last night and honestly wasn't really thinking that much about the fact there had been a shooting, because I think, according to what I just read, there's been a mass shooting, more shootings than there have been days this year. I didn't even think about it. Just there's one, okay, El Paso, check. And then I get up and there's Dayton, check. And now we're about to get the onslaught of solutions. How politically we're going to fix this. How we're going to come up with legal reasons, ways we can fix this. And here's the thing. I'm a church guy. I do this because I'm called, but also because I really believe the church is the hope of the world. And some people would say, well, that's just no, I really believe that. I believe that the cures for all these things, I believe the problem isn't anything except that we live in a culture where we've lost all meaning and hope and purpose, and people are desperate for that, and they will try absolutely anything to find a way to get meaning and hope and purpose. And I believe that sincerely, that is the problem. On a much, much lesser scale. I was in a coffee shop. I do a lot of work in coffee shops. I was in one of the coffee shops that I frequent. And there was a group of 3 20-somethings, early 20-somethings. And they were having a conversation. And I can't help it. I'm a multitasker. I know what's going on around me. Okay, I can tell you pretty much everything that's going on in this room right now as I'm speaking, because that's what I do. I bring in all the data, all the inputs. So if you're talking loud enough for me to hear in a coffee shop, I'm not eavesdropping, but I can hear you. And if it's interesting, I will hear you. Okay? And when these 3 20-somethings switched the conversation to God and church, well, okay, then I eavesdropped. And I'm listening to them, and all 3 of them, two guys and a girl, said they were basically raised or grew up with a strong church influence in their lives. They knew church. And all 3 of them had drifted, walked, sprinted away from church and faith. And so I listened, and then they moved on to movies, because that's how conversations go. You're talking about something really important, the next thing you know, you're talking about, your favorite movie. And so I tuned it back down a bit to where I was just sort of aware of their conversation. Like, I can't turn it off, so just... by the way, if you're ever in a coffee shop with me, recognize that if you're talking loud, I will know what you're talking about. And if it's interesting enough, it may end up a sermon illustration. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you up front that you've been warned. If it happens, I'm not going to apologize, because you knew the risks. But after a little bit, the conversation shifted again, and the young lady pulled out a set of tarot cards, and she's playing with those a little bit, and one of the guys asks her about them, and she says, "Oh yeah, I can tell a lot about you from these." And then one of them brings up that he had I couldn't tell whether it was a girlfriend or a girlfriend, or in that nebulous area in the middle, that she was really into astrology, and he joked about it. He teased her about it because apparently he has a brain. And he was teasing her about being, and she was massively offended. And they said, yeah, a lot of people really put a lot of faith in astrology and tarot cards and all these things. And I'm going, wow. There's a word that the church has kind of mistranslated. We kind of use this word really, really wrong. We've taken a word that everybody in the world knows and understands and has forever, and we've taken it from its actual definition, and we've given it a new definition that nobody understands but us. And we miss how the Bible uses it, and we use it ourselves, and that word is lost. Okay? If you're a Christian and you've been around church for a long time, lost people are people who don't have a relationship with Christ, and if we want to say that, who aren't going to go to heaven when they die. That's lost means not going to go to heaven when you die. That's how Christians use that word. And nobody but Christians use that word that way. When Jesus used that word, he wasn't using it that way. When the Bible uses that word, it's not using it that way. Lost means not where you're supposed to be. We moved a week. We moved week ago this past Saturday, right? Or 2 weeks. We've been moving for a few weeks now. Got out of the house completely on Monday, had the final inspection there, and then I went to a conference Tuesday through Friday and got up, it was late Friday, early Friday morning, and then got up Friday, drove to West Virginia. They had a thing at my parents' church in honoring my little brother, and so I was there, and I got back like at midnight last night, and which means that 47% of everything I value is currently lost. You know why I picked these shoes today? Because I opened the box that has shoes in it, and I said, we're playing first pair wins. Okay? So that's what that means. That word means not where you're supposed to be. And those 3 young adults are lost. Okay? I don't know they're standing with God right this second. I don't know if any of them are going to. It doesn't matter. Right this moment, they are lost. And that's a big word, and it's an important word, and it's one that we're going to be looking at today as we're continuing our series called Powerful. And today we're going to be in Matthew chapter 8. We're actually going to go back and reread a part of what we read last week. But last week, I went through 3 consecutive stories in Matthew about the life of Jesus. And we went through a big one real fast. Today we're going to read one of those stories briefly again. We're going to read a couple more verses, and then we're going to zone in on one verse. And in that one verse, we're going to zone in on one word. And from that one word, I want us to learn a ton of stuff about how we should be viewing the fact that we live in a world full of misplaced, lost people. Does that make sense? Okay? So let's just start reading. This is the part we read last week. When Jesus entered Peter's house, Peter was one of Jesus' followers, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word, and he healed all who were sick. Here's the verse I want us to hit on. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. And you'll notice that if you're trying to follow along in the Bibles we hand out, I'm using a different one because the one we use doesn't have this word. The word that when I was reading this passage a few months ago just jumped all over me, and that is that word bore. He carried the weight of those things, okay? Now, before we go much farther, I need to tell you what's Matthew's up to here. Because I hate to break this to you, but there are 4 books in the Bible about Jesus. And a lot of times we have this idea that these 4 people just sat down and under the Holy Spirit's influence just fired off a book about all the stuff they remembered about Jesus. They're like, I remember this and I remember this. No. They wrote 4 long-form commercials for accepting Christ. Okay? These people had given their lives to Jesus, and they wanted other people to do the same because they saw the advantages, they saw the value, they understand all that Christ stood for. So each of them sat down under the inspiration of God's Spirit to write a book that would help people come to a relationship with Christ. Okay, this is not a set of random thoughts. These people are, like when I get up to speak, I'm not just speaking to give you information, I'm getting up to speak to move you in a direction. Don't forget that. I have an ulterior motive. Okay? And that is to move you toward God every single time. Okay? And when they wrote these Gospels, these books about Jesus, every one of them had that ulterior motive of moving you toward a relationship with God. Matter of fact, John, the fourth of the Gospels, he just flat says it. He says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. In other words, John says, I hung with Jesus for 3 years on earth. He did lots and lots and lots and lots of really cool stuff, and I left almost all of it out. I just chose not to include tons of stuff. But these are written, the things I've included that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. I'm writing this so you will come to a relationship with Christ. And so now we go back to that little verse. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. And recognize that Matthew didn't just throw that in there for the fun of it. He had a purpose. Now, let me give you another. Hope you don't mind. There's a couple of geeky Bible things today. Hope you don't mind geeky Bible. But it's my DNA. I can't help it. We got my daughter a violin a couple weeks ago. I lost track of time, I think a week and a half, whatever it was. And we get home, and I'm looking it up online. And she goes, are you checking to see if we got a good deal? And I said, no. I just want to know about the violin we got. And she goes, that's right. You research everything, don't you? I said, yes, I do. I can't help it. It's DNA. And so I go geek mode on the Bible a lot. And one of my favorite geek things I've learned about the Bible is that the New Testament guys, the guys that are writing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all the letters that they sent out, all of them, or almost all of them, knew the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, really, really well. And for the most part, their listeners did too. The people they're writing to knew it really, really well. So they could play on that, and they did a lot. It'd be kind of like if I were to say, we find ourselves in a weird situation, and I say, we're not in Kansas anymore. Now, immediately what happens in your brain? You got Wizard of Oz, you got Toto, you got Dorothy, you got the Wicked Witch, you got the whole thing going, you got the whole story. And not in Kansas anymore doesn't just mean that we're not physically in the state of Kansas, which I think I've driven through once. But we're in a weird new place. The world just changed in a really strange way, and we are no longer in Kansas, right? That's what that means. All of us get that because all of us know the Wizard of Oz, all of us know Dorothy, all of us know all that story. Well, the Jews of Jesus' day and the New Testament writers' day knew a lot of Bible stories that way. So all they had to do was throw out a quote, and they knew where their listeners' brains would go. And this says, Prophet Isaiah took our illness and bore our diseases. So he's saying, do you remember in the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, in the prophet Isaiah, there were these 4 songs, these 4 songs that Isaiah wrote called the servant songs, about this coming servant that's been confusing us for years because we can't quite make sense of this servant. And everybody goes, yeah, I remember that. Remember that line? Oh, yeah, that reminds me of the whole line. Now, I'm not going to read you the whole servant song because it runs for over a chapter, but I want you to just read the stanza that this came out of. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. That's what we just read. Matthew wrote, right? What happens next? Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. In other words, he gets punished. He took up our pain. We thought he was being punished because of his own sin. He'd done something wrong. He was getting punished for it. That's what we thought. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Whoa, what? You're saying he's getting punished for something he didn't do? Do I know anybody that happened to? Especially, do I know anybody that was pierced for our transgressions? Anybody you can think of who was pierced for Remember, this was written like 500 years before Jesus. Just to remember that piece, okay? 500 years before that, he was pierced for our transgressions. Pierced, like, like a nail through the wrists and feet? Yeah, pierced, okay? The punishment that brought us peace was on him. By his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. See, what he's doing is, here's what's going on. Matthew has been telling the story of Jesus to get you to have a relationship with Christ. Remember? That's the point. And now he's introducing, because he's done the birth of Christ. Matthew chapter 1, Jesus gets born, which is a good place for that to be, right? Matthew 1 and 2, he's born. Then he starts his teaching. Then he calls some followers. Then he has this sermon that just rocks everybody's world, because the Sermon on the Mount, we talked about that 2 weeks ago, the sermon that just freaked out everybody. And now he's in the middle of all these healings, and Matthew wants you to know something. He wants you to know that he's up to something. And he's up to number one. He's setting up the most important part of Jesus' ministry, the cross. He's setting that up. He's saying, now you guys understand, there's more coming. And that little servant song makes him go, what's that got to do with Jesus? We haven't heard anything about Jesus suffering. We're 8 chapters in. Jesus hasn't suffered a bit. But now he's saying, watch for it the rest of the story. Pay attention, something's coming. And he also is pointing out that Jesus' authority isn't primarily about his teaching or his healing. See, what you could have gotten in Matthew 1 through 8 is Jesus is this great miracle worker and teacher. And those are what it's about. And he's going, nah, that's really cool. That's really important. But that's not what it's about. Because Matthew wants you to know something. That physical healing is a temporary reprieve that points to a permanent restoration. See, you're going to learn a lot today. I hope you don't mind. It would be cool to talk to some of the people Jesus healed, wouldn't it? Like, you know who I'd like to talk to? I'd like to talk to Lazarus. Lazarus, that's the one Jesus he raised him from the dead. He'd been dead 3 days. Jesus shows up, raises him from the dead. It would be really cool to go talk to Lazarus. So what I was thinking is I would like to hear, would you like to hear Lazarus' story? The story of somebody who rose from the dead? I'd like to hear that. So I was thinking I'll find him on Facebook, and we'll bring him in, and I'll interview him as part of one of our services. Wouldn't you come for that? To hear me interview Lazarus, who was raised from the dead? That would be really cool. So why don't I do it? Because he got dead again. Right? Jesus raised him from the dead, and he died again. Not immediately, but he died. We don't know how long it was. Peter, we read about Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus goes in. His mother-in-law is really, really sick. He lays hands on her. She gets up, and she's healed until she died. And everybody Jesus healed is currently dead. It didn't stick. I mean, sure, it stuck for a while, but the whole dead thing, it came right back. It just grew back in them again, and they died again. They might have died of something new, but they all died. Blind guys can't see anymore. Matter of fact, their eyes are now made of dust. Deaf people he healed, they can't hear because they have no ears or anything else because it's all dust. Okay? So, what am I saying? I'm saying that the healing wasn't about the healing. The healing was to point us to something bigger. Paul in Corinthians says this, in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For as by a man came death, by a man has come also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, so also in Christ all shall be made alive. What's that mean? You know how Lazarus is dead? Jesus walks up to the tomb. Lazarus, come forth! And he does. There will come a time, this is what this is saying. There will come a time when, however historically Jesus works all this out, Jesus will walk up to a tomb and say, Angie, come forth. Angie will get up. Right? David, come forth. David will come forth. If you're a follower of Christ, there will come a point in history where Jesus will come to all of us and say, get up, and we will get up, and it'll stick this time. It'll stay. We get up for good. We're not going to get sick again. We're not going to get messed up again. We're not going to die again, because once Jesus says it this time, it sticks. And the whole thing that's going on here is Matthew is letting you know that Jesus, all these healings, they're cool little tricks. They're neat little things, and they point to his power and they point to his authority. But all these healings are just a temporary thing that points to something much, much bigger and much, much greater and much, much cooler when God comes back in Jesus Christ and doesn't just restore us, he restores everything. It says, against its will, all creation was subjected to God's curse, but with eager hope, the creation looks forward to the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. Earth, get up! See, that's what Matthew's saying. There's a lot bigger story going on here than what you're thinking. You're thinking this is a cool little story about a dude who tells great stories and teaches amazing and does some miracles. He's like, no, 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 no. You are missing almost all of it. And it's not just future. It's not just about this future, get up. It's about now. It's about Jesus bringing creation, restoration now, both to creation as the nature and the earth and to us. Because the peace that Jesus brings, the shalom, you've heard that word, that he brings is holistic, restores body and soul alike. So Jesus is in the process in us right now of getting ready for ultimate restoration by restoring us and bringing us hope and peace and meaning and purpose and all the things that our culture is missing. All the things that mean that 20-somethings sit around in coffee shops and talk about movies and tarot cards and astrology and why they walked away from church. They're lost, and what they're looking for, we have. But I want to get back to that word bore. He bore all our diseases, all our sins, all our iniquities. See, here's one of the problems that we as the church, and I don't mean just our church, I mean the church have, is we get used to it. We get used to the idea that Jesus died for our sins. We get used to the fact that we get to go to heaven when we die. We get used to the fact that we get life, we get meaning and purpose, yada, yada, yada. And that one word reminds us we can never yada, yada, yada salvation. Because he bore our sin. It wasn't just waving a wand. Jesus didn't just go, okay, you're healed. Okay, you're saved. Okay, you're restored. He didn't do that. He bore it. Matter of fact, that whole song, that servant song in Isaiah, let me just show you some more of it. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering, familiar with pain, like one from whom people hid their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. We read this part. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Later on it says, he was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. One more. And it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin. One guy puts it this way. We, the blind, rebellious people of God, are the sheep who have gone astray. But he is the one who gets beaten for our willfulness. He bears our sin, our rebelliousness. I want to use that for a second. I'm going to move away from sin, and I want to talk about rebelliousness, because that's what we really do. We talk about sin an awful lot like it's something that we accidentally did. When we know we're doing wrong and we choose to do it, and it's rebellion. It's rejecting God, rejecting his standards every time we do it, and he bears that weight so we don't have to. See, one of the things that happens when we undervalue the weight Jesus bore, it undermines our gratitude and our commitment. Makes us less thankful. We're used to it. Cross is just jewelry. Should I wear the cross? Or should I wear this other pendant? What earrings would work today? Maybe I should put a cross on my car, because that's a really cool symbol. Yeah, it's a symbol of the weight Jesus bore. But there's something else, and we're going to keep coming back to this piece. Is when we fail to count the cost Jesus paid for our salvation, we not only lose our gratitude, we also undervalue the importance of reaching the lost. Because if it didn't weigh anything, what's the big deal giving it to somebody else? You ever re-gift something? You're at the... Matter of fact, one of the things that happened when we moved was there were a few things that we threw away because they were just re-gifts to start with. You know, we were going with the white elephant with my wife's family, and her mom got a present she didn't want, so she gave it to Kim because she thought Kim might want it. And so it's sitting in the laundry room, and I'm like, I'm not moving this. I am not moving this. We moved it from the other house. When we moved a year ago, this thing got carried over here. It sat here for a year, and now I'm supposed to move it back on the off chance that she'll pick it up and no, this is going straight to the dump. Because it's just a re-gift. Remember we got married, it's almost been 30 years ago. We were in such great shape because when you get married, you're usually the age all your friends are getting married. We didn't have to buy a wedding gift for like 2 years. Because we just had the stash of wedding gifts over here. So we got like enough towels to cover this wall. So we gave away towels. There's one of my good friends, and I am not 100% sure to this day that I didn't give her back her towels. I don't know. Because when you undervalue something, you don't treat it well. And when we undervalue the weight Jesus bore, and then we look at people who need Jesus, we don't think it's that big a deal. But we all, like sheep, we just read this, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all, the weight. But Jesus has a totally different view of that because he understands it. Here's what Jesus put it. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? Don't you? Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? Yeah. See, this. We're distracted when something we value is lost. We're distracted. I was getting ready to shave, I think it was Thursday. I only shave 3 times a week. I got a beard. I only show this much hair, and what I have is red, so it just barely shows on my face, and I have to, so I don't have to shave that often, so stuff lasts me a while. And I had some Nivea aftershave because I have very sensitive skin. And we'd moved, and I'm shaving, and I couldn't find my shave cream. I couldn't find that, and I thought, well, so I asked Kim about it, and she goes, oh. You know how I threw away some of her stuff? Yeah. She said, I'm pretty sure I thought that was empty, so I threw it away. I'm like, yeah, it looks empty for you. That's like 3 years worth of Nivea for me. And so we went, I used aloe that day, and I went and got some, and I was getting ready to shave this morning, and I had to iron a shirt, and so I'm cleaning off the ironing board, which is in our little apartment we're living in right now, and there's this little box. You know the best way to find something? Replace it. And open that box, and sure, you know what's there? Yeah, I will never have to buy Nivea again. I got a full bottle and a half full bottle, I'm done. But when I was looking for it, I was distracted. I got to find that. And every once in a while, something will hit you when you move like that, because like I said, like 47, 62%, something like that, of all of my possessions are currently lost. And every once in a while, one will pop up. Like eventually I'm going to get tired of wearing this specific belt that I've been wearing for a week now, because I don't know where the others are. And one of these days, I'm just going to get tired of it, and I will get fully distracted, and it'll have my attention, and I will tear that place upside down until I find the stash of belts that I have, because I'll be distracted by it. Something I value is lost. I'm distracted by it. Are we distracted by the lost? Are we distracted by the fact that these people are wandering around? Well, if we're not, I think there's about 3 reasons for that. One is we've lost the weight. We've lost sight of the value of our own salvation. We forget how much weight Jesus bore for us. Okay? Another is we've lost sight of the value of the lost. I look at that person and say, well, they're meandering. They're lost. Or the third, we've lost sight of our purpose. See, Jesus put it this way. The Son of Man came to seek and save those who were lost was his purpose. And now I'm going to tell you what you're thinking, and I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Maybe I'm going to tell you what you're feeling. I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Because right now, a significant percentage of you, those of you, the committed Christians in the room, those specifically, you're feeling guilty. And that is the exact wrong feeling. I don't want you to feel guilty. Guilty is a terrible thing. It's a terrible feeling. I want you to be informed. I don't want you to feel guilty. Because guilty doesn't work, for one thing, and guilty is not the way God wants you to feel. Let me see if I can help you out with this. Because there's this country I read about once. And in this country, they have husband and wives just like we do. But in that country, which you may have heard of this country, sometimes the wife will come up with some things she wants the husband to do. They'll call it a honey-do list in that country. Okay, you've heard of that country. Oh, good, very good, very good. And the wife will place things on the honey-do list, quote, the honey-do list. And then she will graciously and lovingly and frequently remind the husband that those things are on his list. And sometimes she'll even pick one of those in this foreign country. She will pick one specific thing on that honey-do list that she is very, very concerned about getting off the honey-do list. And so she will lovingly, graciously, frequently remind her husband of this item on his honey-do list. Okay? And she will remind him enough of it to where he begins to feel guilty about it. And in one day, he'll wake up, or she will she will politely point out to him about this item, and he will decide, out of the loving part of his heart, doggone, I better get that done so she'll get off my back, right? In this country that I'm talking about, not here. And just imagine yourself that you are the husband, whether you're male or female. Pretend you're the husband in this situation, and you finally go out and remove this item from the honey-do list that you have been being reminded of for months. Okay, years. How do you feel when you complete the task and walk back and lovingly inform your spouse that it is no longer on the honey-do list? How do you feel? Relieved. Thank goodness that's over. That's what happens when you feel guilt. When you have something that makes you feel guilty, when you finally do it, what you feel is relief. You don't have any desire to ever do it again, but you feel relief. Now, when you're living into your purpose, a totally different thing happens. See, guilt and purpose, when I do something because I feel guilty, afterward I feel relief. But when I do something because it's part of my purpose, afterward I feel fulfilled. Some of you have had the pleasure of helping a person come to Christ. You've played a role in somebody accepting Jesus Christ. It could be that you've actually led them to Christ. It could be you unpacked a blue bag with them here. It could be that you just brought them to church. You invited them to church and they came and they've made the decision, or even you invited church and they've started coming. They're coming regularly, moving in that direction. How do you feel when that happens? Do you feel relieved or do you feel fulfilled? We were coming back from that conference, and we stopped at a restaurant, and the name had something to do with Damn Yankee. That's all I remember. Actually, we really shouldn't have gone in. It's called Damn Yankee Whiskey Bar, I think it was. But that's where we were, and the food was actually quite good. And our waitress comes over, and I'm not making up, it's a little girl. We asked, she's 17, she's got braces. We're like, how do you work at a place called Whiskey Bar? She goes, well, I can take the order, but then the bartender has to bring you the drink if you order a drink. And I'm not saying anybody on the staff ordered a drink. It was just me and Barry and Vince and Angie. And so we're sitting there, and we're having a conversation with this little girl. I shouldn't call her a little girl, but I mean, she's 17. She's a little girl. We're having a conversation the whole time. We're having fun with her. We're making her laugh. We're just talking about anything and everything. The fact that she's 17 recurs a lot. And whenever I'm out in public, I'm in undercover mode. The last thing I want you to figure out about me is I'm a pastor, because it just twists the way people view me, and I don't like that twist. And so I don't lie about it, but I just don't bring it up. And look at me. Nobody's going to guess that first off. Okay? So we're in the restaurant. We're talking to this little girl, And we're paying our bill, and we're getting ready to leave, and I just decided, I looked at her and said, what do you think we do for a living? She went, I don't know. Vince helpfully pointed out, Vince goes, okay, we're not strippers. So that was helpful. And she sort of made a couple guesses, and then I said, we're a church staff. I'm the lead pastor, Barry's my executive. Vince is in charge of our discipleship, spiritual development, and Angie comes with Barry and does everything else. And the look on her face, I could have at that moment told her I was her real father, and she would have been less shocked. And Barry pulls out his phone, and he pulls out, I don't know whether he pulled up the church app or he pulled up the website, but he goes over and he shows her pictures because she's not buying it. And he shows, here, there's Steve, and as we went back to the van, I went, oh, man, you know what would have been really cool right there? If on the website and on the app there was a video of me giving a tease to the gospel. 30 seconds, where I talk just enough because I don't mean this. We're called to be fishers of people, and we had that girl on the hook. Really did. She was listening. She was in. We had just torn down so many of the barriers she has against Christianity. We had ripped so many of them down that she was listening. I said, if we'd had that video on the app, and if then we'd have had another thing that would explain all the good news, that we could either walk through it with her, or she could look at herself later, wouldn't that be cool? And we get in the van, and Angie starts sending me apps. I'm going, we're going to do that. We're going to, because we had a chance. We took her a few steps. We helped her make she made some good decisions about Christ in that moment, though she didn't finish the course. She moved toward God in that little bit. In that little conversation, she moved closer to God. I wish we could have taken her farther, but we took her a few steps. And you know how I felt after that? Did I feel relieved? No. I felt fulfilled. This is where we're supposed to be. Now, each of us has our own personal spiritual gifts. You have the things in you that you do. I get to do this for a living. I get to stand up and teach you the Bible for a living. And I don't know of anything I do that makes me more fulfilled than this. But I'll also tell you one thing that is a really close second is anytime I get to tell anybody about Jesus Christ. Anytime I get to help them make one step, two steps. I've got people all through my life that I am trying to help them make a step. And I feel fulfilled, not relieved, fulfilled. And if you've ever led anybody to Christ, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And the problem is we replace it with guilt because we want to carry the weight and we forget who bore the burden of our salvation. Starts with a J, ends with an S. Jesus bore the weight. He did the heavy lifting of salvation. I don't have to do the heavy lifting. I don't have to feel guilty about it because he did the work. But it's my purpose to help share that with others. So I get the joy of when the doors open of helping some little girl break down a couple barriers that she has about how she thinks Christians are supposed to look and act. I get to help tell somebody a story about how God worked in my life. And I get to, just like you guys, I get to bring them to church. I get to say, why don't you come to our church because we got it set up. Welcome home, folks. We got this crazy guy and he'll tell you all about Jesus. And it's not hard and it's not supposed to be because you feel guilty. Matter of fact, Jesus put it this way. He says God's commands are not a burden. When Jesus says, go into all the world and proclaim the good news, when he says, go find those that are lost, it's not a burden. It's a blessing. It's a joy. It's a privilege. And if we can get our brain wrapped back around that, if we can get our brain to where when we hear the 320-somethings talking about how lost they are, at this present moment, we don't walk away guilty. We walk away going, okay, next time, what am I going to do differently? Next time, how am I going to get one of them aside and ask a good question? Next time, how am I going to do something to help that person who is lost become found? And like I said, one of the things that we do here is we make it easy for you to bring people here. Matter of fact, there's probably people in this room who have been brought here or found their way here who don't have a relationship with Christ. I know bunches of them. They keep showing up because we keep telling them the good news and they keep hearing it. And what am I going to do next? Anybody want to guess? Yeah. Every time, every week, I'm going to walk over here, I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to say, is it your week? There's a bunch of steps for most people between where they are and having a relationship with Christ. And we work really hard to create a safe place here where the lost can get found. And every week, is it your week? If you're here and you don't have a relationship with Christ, I want you to remember that piece. That it's not about you carrying something. It's not about you earning something. Because who bore all the weight of your sin? Jesus. Who pays fully for your salvation? Jesus. And we're just the people who tell everybody. Are you looking for hope? Are you looking for meaning? Are you looking for purpose? The answer is not in a blue bag. The answer is in Jesus, and this bag is the way that we point you that direction. If you'd like to have a conversation with somebody about how to have that relationship with Christ, at the end of the service, you grab a blue bag. There's someone each corner of the stage, some on those tables in the back. If you grab a blue bag, there's some people we've got that are trained. They'll take 10 minutes. They'll show you how to have that relationship with Christ and let you make the decision and make you fully aware that Jesus carried the burden for your iniquities, your sins, your failings, all that stuff. Okay? If you have that relationship with Christ, we know from the faith that our next job is to be baptized, just to announce to the world we're followers of Christ. If you want to be baptized, we're doing it this Wednesday, first Wednesday. It's really simple, really easy, and really meaningful and powerful in our lives as we're baptized to announce we're following Christ. If you want to start living, I told you about living into your purpose and how telling people about Jesus is part of your purpose, but you have a bigger purpose than that in addition, as how you fit into God's work here in the church or wherever it is in the world that God has you designed to work. And we have 4-step classes that help you get there. Step 1 class is tonight. And I teach that one. I'll talk about our church, how we help make that happen in your life. I'll tell a bunch of stories. It takes about an hour. You don't have to sign up ahead of time. You just got to show up. We provide childcare. It's fun. And it's moving toward the person God designed you to be. It could be, if you're a follower of Christ, that you want to remind yourself of the weight Jesus carried in a tangible way. And we've got a communion station, one here in the front, one in the back. If you want to, during this next song, you want to go to there and just take communion and remind yourself of what Christ did for you. Feel free to do that. If you want to pray about anything, we've got a cross over in the corner, and that's a place you can just go during this next song and you can pray. About anything you want to pray about. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got some people around the outside of the auditorium who'd love to pray with you. I hope you got where we're going. The world is in desperate need. Not the world, the people around you, your neighbors, your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people drinking coffee beside you in a coffee shop. There's a lot of them that are lost. And they need to get found. And you don't need to carry the weight. You just need to carry the message. Because when it comes to salvation, you don't have to do any of the work. Because Jesus bore all the weight.